Welcome to everybody here. Thank you for making time for us. So before the session, I think we were talking amongst ourselves, actually, who is the audience today? So we would just like a show of hands before we start. How many are directly in the film business? Like, you have your own film company or you're making films yourselves. How many is that? Okay, that's maybe one third, is it? Okay, or half maybe, or some are shy. How many are from government agencies such as FINAS or LPF or none? I think they're still eating. It's okay. So the rest are maybe media, maybe or maybe. So I think I'm starting on the assumption that this sort of topic would be of relevance to people who are making films already or who want to start making films and want to explore how do we make films that we co-produce with our neighboring countries and also export beyond our own borders. I assume lah. If not, then please let us know during the Q&A what it is input you want to know. So we have a distinguished panel, as you say. I thought I would introduce them a bit, but our host already did that from the start. So what I did was I looked through their IMDb profiles to see what their 5 latest films were. And if you want to find out if a person is a busy filmmaker, look up IMDb. Unless it's a fake, they put in fake info. But if in the past 5 years or past 5 films were all made in a couple of years and you've heard of them and they travel, a lot of ratings, that means they're very busy people. So I'll start with Alem here. Alem he started off as a high school teacher. You may not know this, but he has produced many films, including co-productions beyond Philippines as well. So the film he co-produced was called Renoir here. It was in MIFFest 2 nights ago. Unfortunately, he was not here then, but I was told it was a sold-out house. Did anybody see Renoir here? Yeah, well, one. Okay. Well, I don't know where the sold-out crowd from is. Maybe they're elsewhere. But yeah. So, and some nights I feel like walking. That's also traveling the festival circuit. It cannot show in MIFFest because it's, Malaysia tak boleh LGBT kan. So we pretend it doesn't exist. So, but if you're resourceful, you can find ways of watching a lot of his filmography. And then next to him, Shamin. Shamin is, of course, a second-generation filmmaker, right? Born into showbiz and making her mark there. And from a legacy that, from the 90s, I think, has sort of defined what we think of as commercial Malay cinema. So she's like the Nurul Izzah of filmmaking. Then Tan Thi Bich has been involved in many films I have seen, including wonderful things like Ajuma or was it Ajuma? Did I get it wrong? Pop Eye. Yes, Pop Eye. Yes, I'm getting it wrong. So you were involved in something I saw, but because I only did the last 5. Who did Ajuma then? No, one of the people on this panel was involved. Maybe I didn't read IMDb properly. Yeah. So no, sorry, I didn't mean Ajuma. Budi Pekerti. Yes, Budi Pekerti, which was shown here. It's an Indonesian film, but she's one of the co-producers. So we want to find out things like that. How does a Singaporean producer come on board a Indonesian project, and it got screened in Malaysia, so things like that. And one of the latest ones is the Molly Surya one. It's based on an Indonesian novel, so things like that lah. Her latest film here was no, it's not here. I think Useful Ghost is not here, right? But it was in Cannes. It's a Thai horror movie that got very good reviews. I think it won something as well. And then finally on the left, on the extreme left, I just asked her how to pronounce her name, so I hope I don't screw it up. Thi Bich Ngoc Tran Thi Bich Ngoc something like that lah. Yeah, it's so we will start with just some preliminary questions. Not everybody may want to answer, so answer if you feel it's relevant. So I'll throw it to anybody among the four. So when you develop a project, when you start a project, do you think this is something for local audience or something for a international audience, or do you actually treat those two as the same thing? So anybody can jump in. Yeah, come on. Yeah, the faster we. Oh, by the way, because I forgot that this hall was going to be cold, so I bought this at Brand Outlet on the way up. So if you feel the same way, you can get this. It's 59 ringgit. Because I actually have a very thin shirt underneath. So I was wondering whether I could afford this 59 ringgit. And then I remembered our Prime Minister just gave all of us 100 ringgit each. So round of applause, yeah.
Yes. You do have to think about it. And when I started my career, I was actually told that if I want a film, I have to choose whether I want the film to be screened and watched by many Filipino audiences, or I want to go into international film festivals. So it's very different, the art house route and the mainstream route.
You think that's still true? Do you think that's still a sharp distinction, or is it more fluid now?
There are crossovers, very rare. Like, for example, say Parasite, right? It won in Cannes, but then it had a wide release. But they're very, very few. Yes, there are exceptions, but I would say more to the rule that art house and mainstream are very different.
Right, yeah. Because I remember there was an anecdote about the famous Filipino filmmaker Lino Broca, where his producer told him before he would start a film, he said, Lino, this time make sure no awards. Because, the kind of films that win awards won't make money for her. So that leads does anybody else wants to jump in? Yeah, Shamin.
I think when we, at the beginning of the project, we always, the main goal is always to serve the local market, even when we, develop the story, the script. But I think today, because there are a lot of crossover films, we always try to package the film. Of course, it has to be successful in the local market first, but we have to think about how to, insert the elements to have a global appeal. When we talk about global appeal, I think we're more focusing on the Southeast Asian market because that's the most important thing for us in Southeast Asia. But I always believe that if you produce a film, it is the first market that you have to serve is always your country's audience.
Okay, Sian, I think most of your films, have been co-production. So how did it come about that way?
I think for us, when you make any sort of film, there must be an audience in mind. You don't want to make film for just like 5 people. And whether the audience is local or global, I think there has to be a thoughtful process to it. And it affects how you want to finance the film, how you want to market the film, and how you want to release the film. And that's part of the thought process. Most of my projects are co-productions, and that means that they're financed across the different countries, globally, during its development stage. So the script, when we're developing it, we work with a lot of experts to make sure that it speaks to an audience that is beyond their home country, to make sure that the stories that we want to tell relate to an audience that maybe in France or Germany or in North America.
Big Ngoc, if you have.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. So I just want to follow up on Alem because I used to be the head of production department for one of the biggest entertainment studio in Vietnam back in 2000. And so for 10 years, we produced films that really focus on the local audiences. And then for the past 10 years, I decided to become an independent producer. And there's a certain distinction between those two types of films. However, for the past 10 years, when I approach a project, I think it's always, I need to feel something that, as a producer, I feel related to the story. And I do like it at certain level. And thankfully, that all of the story that I like to produce, there's always something deep-rooted in my own culture and my own countries. So I think there's a certain locality, identity in the story that I believe it can travel beyond borders. However, the way to make the film and produce the film that we have to keep in mind to keep the certain quality, the international standard that the film can travel. So there's always combination of the local and international element within a project. But I think in terms of the story, it cannot stay away from your culture and the identity.
So that's a nice segue to the next question. What do you think are certain commonalities among films that do well in the ASEAN region? Because there have been some that travel, recently, like the How to Make Millions before, but it's kind of rare. Only occasionally you would have. So maybe if you want to theorize, of course, a lot of it is just luck or the zeitgeist. But what do you think certain elements are in common that audiences throughout Southeast Asia like? Or is there nothing at all? Yeah, maybe we can start.
Okay.
Yeah. Go back here. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the question because I just finished a project market in Da Nang Asian Film Festival 2 weeks ago, and I was very fortunate to have the producer, the screenwriter of How to Make Millions from Myanmar. She came to give a case study on this film, and I think that it doesn't rely on luck at all. I think that the strategy of the producer and screenwriter is really well thought on the project, and what make the film travel and what make the audience love the film is they really go deep into the daily life, and the story refer to something that we all feel connected to, like in each of our family, there's always one person who's out of, black sheep out of the box. And you always see that in the film, and that's really well thought of the producer and screenwriter. So again, it's not luck, but it is, again, something that really go around our daily life, and they pick and choose and make it well told in their screenplay. So at the end of the day, we watch a film and we want to feel connected and related to to the film, to the character, and I think that's what we have to look for when we make film. Reflect life. That's something that we feel connected to. And Southeast Asian film, we have that luxury because we share certain same culture and family connection. So that is something we feel familiar with, and yeah, that's my thought.
Okay, so do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, and I also remembered that the producer of Exuma was also at the NAF last week, and it's a Korean film that did very well in Southeast Asia, and I think there is a similarity between them, even though thematically they're two different films. That it is something that is familiar within like the culture of Southeast Asia, and there's something I think about like the storytelling that everyone could relate to, and I think it's that relatability that people want to see on screen, especially in today's time where there's so much content out there. When you tell a story that connects with someone deeply, I typically feel like those films are the ones that are doing well now.
Shamin, so because of course you're planning your first Southeast Asian blockbuster, so what are the elements that need to be there?
Actually, Scope Production, we're known to been producing all of the commercial films, purely entertainment. But when we produced Sharif, we realized we actually received different feedback, different love from the audience. And that is because we relate to them, just like they said, we show them the other side of storytelling, and they can actually feel connected to the story because in reality, that's what's been happening as well, so that's why they feel relatable to the story, which, brings us to Blood Brothers 2. It is, again, a commercial film, but we try our best to actually insert the elements of people so that it reflects the people. And starting from that point, we have actually been working hard to, produce more and more films that are for the people, same genre as How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, because I think it is very important for us to give back to the audience instead of just, providing them pure entertainment. It is also very important, I think, because we are also sending messages to the society. Southeast Asia, I think we probably live, the same environment, facing the same social issues. So, as filmmakers, I think it is very important for us to send strong messages to the audience, to the society through our movies. Yeah.
Yeah, just thoughts, theorize. What would?
I think, and I've heard this even from festival programmers, that audiences actually prefer feel good movies now, because of what's happening in the world. So aside from relatability, the film must also make them feel good, and at the end of the day, it is a form of entertainment. So they must also be entertained.
Because also it occurred to me that ASEAN, if you were to compare it to something like, say, Europe in the past, where, I mean, you had films that travel around Europe, but a lot of them actually had stars that were recognizable throughout Europe. You know, like everybody would know Alain Delon or Catherine Deneuve, that kind of thing. But I think ASEAN, we lack that. We don't really know the stars of the other countries. So the fact of the story becomes even more important, because you can't just say, oh, it's that movie with that person acting. It's because it has the whole feeling packaged together with the story as well, which is, it's trickier. It's very tricky, of course. Many have tried and failed miserably. So how have your collaborations with other ASEAN partners been like in co-producing? I mean, I'm sure you've had many. Maybe if you want to highlight one particular that was the most interesting to you, or you learned the most from, be it positive or negative. But if we have been in a feel-good mood, you'll talk about what was the best co-production experience you had with another ASEAN countries, or were they all? Well, ASEAN, because you've had the most experience here. So
I mean,
you've never done a Malaysian co-production.
no,
Oh, I wonder why. Yes.
never, not yet.
Did someone
Maybe
ask you
tomorrow,
for?
maybe tomorrow? Yeah.
Did someone seek bribes? No, right? Yeah.
No. No, but I come from Singapore, and Singapore was the first country in Southeast Asia to push out like the co-production fund right before the Philippines, and as a result of that, as producers from Singapore, we got the opportunity to co-produce a lot with the region. And so like you said, one of the latest project that I produced was a Thai film that stars Tapika, one of the biggest star in Thailand, and she was in a film called Pimak before. And this was a project that I think knew the producers from like years ago when I was an assistant producer, and I came across like this director, and I followed his works from earlier. So when he wanted to make his first feature, we brought the Singapore financing on board. It's a Singapore, Thailand, French plus Germany co-production. So quite a simple 4-country co-production, nothing beyond that. And
Simple. See, she makes it sound so effortless. Yeah.
for 4 countries. Some people are like 8, 12, but with 4, we wanted to keep it manageable, because like as more countries and more stakeholder comes on board a co-production, it gets complicated because of the elements that you want to work in. So for that project, the entire shoot, of course, was done in Thailand. From Singapore, we brought in
This is useful ghost.
useful goals. Yeah, we brought in product designer, we brought in sound designer, we brought in elements of the project that we think could add value to it. And I think the beautiful thing about co-production, which also could be challenging, is deciding which element and then choosing the best people that can elevate a project or bring expertise that they may not have in that country to help with the production of the project. And this was a project that then premiered in Cannes. We won the Grand Prix at the Critics Week, and now it's doing its international sales and going to theaters both in France and Thailand next month. So I feel like overall for me it's a good experience, because everything is smooth. Every partner is clear with what they bring on board, with the elements that they bring on board, with the money that they bring on board, and everyone came to a clear understanding of what we want the film project to be, and that probably is the most ideal sort of co-production structure for me.
Okay, Alam, if you have.
Actually, I can think of 2. So one is I co-produced with Zen. It's Some Nights I Feel Like Walking, which, as you said, cannot be shown here.
Yeah. Because we have no LGBT here, people here.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't understand. What is this about? Yeah.
Yes. Come to think of it, we are releasing a documentary with the Malaysian LGBTQ profile,
okay.
which again,
I think I know that one, yeah.
I'm sure we can't show it here also. But in any case, so what happened was our director wanted to show Manila in a way that it has never been shown before. I mean, you've mentioned
Without traffic.
Well, there's traffic. Maybe show it in a different light, or light it in a different way. So we you mentioned Nino Broca. So there are films done in the 70s, 80s that showed Manila already, very gritty and such. But we wanted to do a new version of it in a different light. So we actually partnered with Singapore, with Giraffe and Momo, and we got this super talented cinematographer who shot it in a way that when you look at it, you know it's Manila, but then you kind of are surprised how different it looks. That there is something new to it,
Like
and then
authentic?
in a way, and the colors are also different. And then our editor colorists were also from Singapore, so the way it's cut, it's unlike any other Filipino films that you would see. But then there are other Filipino elements, and then we also co-produced with Taiwan, who did the sound. So again, another different layer. Of course, we had to do a lot of the recording from the Philippines sent to them, and then they'll play around with it. So it's both like a very local film, but at the same time, you have elements that you feel like it's something new for both local and Filipino audiences. The second example I want to bring up is Renoir. So Renoir is co-produced by Japan, France, Philippines, Indonesia, and Singapore, and then Qatar. So for us, we shot one scene. One of the scenes in the finale was shot in the Philippines because they want to shoot it in a yacht, and it has to be a sea that is not, that one does not look like Japan, and two that is indistinguishable, like you don't know where it is. And so we showed them different beaches and sites and whatnot in the Philippines, and they loved it, and then we shot it there. So it's very interesting how for such a big project, you have the French coming in. The French brought the sound. They did post-production in France, the editing. The Singaporeans also brought in the cinematographer and a lot of the other elements. It's interesting how a small country like the Philippines was still able to contribute in this aspect by showing something from the country, and then being able to use it in the film.
Yeah, because I liked what CN and you pointed out as well. I think these are the two first countries in Southeast Asia to have co-production sort of inducements, right? If you have a foreign partner coming in, then there are funds that you can apply for. So maybe something other countries can learn from as well. And then the next question, the question of getting local industry funding versus international sort of grants kind of funding. I mean, industry funding versus soft money. So how has your experience been in a kind of maybe ratio, or has it changed over the years, which is more or less important? Or is it the answer the same as art house versus commercial? In terms of, the kind of funding you get, does it also determine what kind of stories you tell and what kind of release you have? And how has your ratio been in your how many percent money comes from here, how many percent money comes from there? Because the late John Badalu, a friend of ours, in my last conversation with him, we were walking around Jogja, and I asked this question: to get into one of these top 3 festivals, how many percent of it should be public money? And he very quickly answered, 70 is good. Yeah, and it didn't occur to me like, wow, because I think a lot of people quite earnestly and naively think that if they produce their own film, they fund it themselves, they get their friends to give money, then if it's really good, it will go to these top tier festivals, but it doesn't work that way, right? Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with whether you have public funding or not. It's really the film itself. And if I am not mistaken, I think John says this because a big studio, a big local studio, will not fund an art house film. Or if they do, they would just give a very, very small amount. Which I think that may be the reason why if you want to go art, and if you go to the top 3 festivals, you must be super art house. Very, very rare that they will accept something that's more commercial or...
Because so the type of story determined.
Yeah. And so very few commercial or investors, equity investors would come on board on such a project. So that's why you try to, and also it's very hard to recoup. It's hard to get the money back. So like I always joke well, because I also teach at the university. I teach producing. So I always tell my students, if you are going to get somebody's money, make sure it's because they want to walk the red carpet and not because they expect the money to come back.
Okay, Sian, do you have any insights?
Yeah, I think it's similar that I think very much dependent on the film and where films that are financed like only minority by like public fund that got into festivals and also the other way around. But I would say that in terms of co-production, I think in the past, like maybe a decade ago, a lot of the co-productions coming out from our region, we see more international co-production. So like these films needing funds from like places like France, Germany. But I would say over the last couple of years, because of like the new funding that has come up within our region, we see now more regional sort of co-production. A film could be made just out of Asia purely through the public funds of Asia or like private financing of Asia. And I think probably audience is changing a little bit. There are, people have been consuming different type of stories, content, different genre of things. So there are also more private money for like a film that is intended for festivals, and also festivals are trying for new ways to reach different sort of audience. So we also see more commercial films that are headed to festival as a way to launch the film or to tap into different sort of international audience. We do a lot of co-production, but not all films need co-production. Like we tap into co-production because maybe we want some expertise. Maybe that's the only way to get money to make a film. But not every film needs co-production. If it could be funded by like a single country, by a single party, and it makes sense in terms of like the business plan, that is also a good model.
I also think that for independent or for art house films, there are higher chances for them to actually be successful. I mean, look at Abang and Adik. Abang and Adik is a great case study. It's intended to be festival films, but it made box office here in Malaysia too. And I don't think anyone would expect that, but it also won the Golden Horse award, and that would be the setting stone for Malaysian independent films or art house films to be successful. And as for like either we get the funding from the industry or from the grants, I think there are not much difference. I mean, like she said, if we were to do co-productions, that would actually give us a better opportunity to explore the other regions' incentives. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think related to that as well, what roles have played things like film festivals, film labs, film markets outside your own country? What role has that played in your own career? And do you think these are becoming more or less important, maybe for newer people now? Yeah. Oh, anybody just jump in? Yeah. Oh, I want to start. Yes.
I think for most of my film recently, all of my co-producer and collaborator, I actually met during film festival and film lab and project market. But it doesn't happen right away. I mean, it's a relationship that we build together and it grows with time. And when the right project comes, then that relationship becomes some professional co-producer in one film. So I couldn't imagine that doing, let's say, art house film, we cannot stay away from co-production. But the beauty thing out of that is like our industry is still very young. So doing co-production and have a co-producer on a film, like my film, I have access to really a good pool of talent from other countries. Let's say my last film, Skin of Youth, because we do production in Vietnam, one of the weak department is sound, production sound department. So I always get complaint from the post-production team in France, like how could you use that sound? So I really wish one day I could bring the sound team from like Singapore. So on Glorious Ashes, I got the co-producer, but we shot during COVID time, so we couldn't do that. So on Skin of Youth is co-production between Vietnam, Japan, and Singapore. So I have access to a great team from Singapore over to Vietnam and really do something well that I wish I could do. So without co-production, I cannot get access to those kind of great opportunity. And then on top of that, the film, since it have Japan co-producer, it get released in Japan, which is really rare that a Vietnamese film get released in Japan. So I think that co-production not only help us to access to the funding, the money, but also to a greater level that the film have access to even audiences outside of Vietnam. So I think that is one of the beautiful thing on co-production. But as Sian said, not every film need co-production, because moving between commercial producer and art house producer, I also believe it really depends on the project, and producer must strategize how to get the film financed. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, she mentioned Skin of Youth, not showing in MIFFest because also LGBT. Yeah, so but you can look it up online. You can see a trailer and find a way to watch it.
Yeah, so like the three of us did Locarno Open Doors at the time when the focus was Southeast Asia. And then the organizers of the of the program were very surprised how we all knew each other already. Because prior to us was South Asia, and they were still getting to know each other. But for us, we already knew each other. We were even gossiping already about other filmmakers over, across the region. And it's thanks to Busan, to festivals in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Singapore, and now Malaysia, that we get to know each other and we get to interact with each other. And so that's one of the most important things that you do when you attend a festival, is you network. And then we also all did CFIC together, and that's where we developed and learned so much about international co-productions. And then I have a story that during my first Cannes, at the breakfast meetings for the Producers Network, I met a German producer. And then we kind of stayed in touch, but not really. We weren't really very close, but then we were there for like 12 breakfasts together. And then maybe 2-3 years later, we saw each other on the bus in Berlin. And then that's when we reconnected again. And then that's when I emailed her my projects. And then she came on board, and then we got the Hessen Fund from her region. And then I'm co-producing the documentary with Suan now. So, so these things like just happen because you network and know people.
I think we joked about this on social media once. You should join all these things because you can get access to white people's money. So make use of their colonial guilt. Even though I think the British are not guilty enough, I don't think we get any funding from them, right? But Dutch and Holland and Japan are okay. They are good colonial guilt trippers. But British very disappointing, and Portugal maybe not much
But
money lah.
actually, not many people know this, and I'm not too sure why. They do provide rebate. Actually, the UK, if you were to film your, if you were to do your filming there, they provide quite a high and good rebate. Yeah.
Okay, have you done that?
Not yet.
Okay. I'm sure there have been some Malaysian films shot Europe, but macam it looks like hidden camera and kind of. I won't mention one, but it was like in Eiffel
think a
Tower.
lot
I think it's like handycam.
A lot of Indian productions shot in UK. Yeah.
This is a big market also, right? Let's see, next one. Are there any challenges or benefits that are unique to your own country, even within Southeast Asia? Because you were just saying Southeast Asia, we have a lot of things in common. We like ghosts of women with long hair. We like food. We like, old people. We like stories about old people in that sense. But what do you think are some of the unique things? Because I was reading an interview with Big Ngoc where you were saying that piracy is a major issue. But this was maybe like 2 years ago, the interview. So I'm not sure if that is still the case where, for some reason, the whole focus of the article was like, she talks about piracy, and then everything else became small.
It's the MPA order. No, I think my government do a lot of hard campaign against piracy. So over the past year, a lot of piracy link is shut down. So, but again, it's not something that can be done overnight. It's really technically, I think it's complicated because I heard that the server is somewhere out of Vietnam, in Russia or somewhere. Even my film got leaked on one link when it hasn't been released in Vietnam yet. But we cannot do anything because every time we report the link, 4 hours later the film is up there again, and then I was told that the server is in Russia. So it's something like it cannot be done overnight. It's something that. So when I release a film, I really worried and cautious about that. It's really something we're worried about. But other than that, I think what's beautiful in Vietnam is we have a young market, and I think it's one of the rare markets in Southeast Asia that bounce back to beyond the level before COVID time. So the local market is really growing, and we have a young generation who, dedicated and passionate about film on both sides, commercial and independent. So both sectors are really flourishing. And we have new film festival, we have new gathering every year, people coming. So I think that is something really good for the market. But what we still look for and still waiting for the past 16 years, that is still in the law, is the public fund for support the cinema. I think that's still in discussion within the government. So hopefully, if that fund come out, even public or from private funding, then we have more chance to do co-production with our ASEAN countries.
Yeah, of course. If you read in the trades, Vietnam is definitely the booming story in Southeast Asia, and also Indonesia, I think, because in the sense that the ticket buying population is just increasing so much at a much bigger rate than other countries. Sian, anything that's unique to Singapore? The Confucian values. Yeah.
Our food is not better than Malaysia. No, but I feel like in Singapore, in terms of like the film industry, we have a lot of support from the government, and I think the Film Commission supports us. I think all through like the training of like whether it's a producer, director, cinematographer, from their training, their school days, all the way to when they're making short film, feature films, and later on when they want to develop bigger projects. I suppose like Singapore, across all our industries, we are a port and a hub. And I think that could be said similarly of the film industry, that we are actually a port for like whether it's money or talents that come through. And I would say that would always be the strong holding point of like the Singapore's film industry.
So Shamin, what is unique to Malaysia? And this is a Malaysian audience, so they have to agree with you. If they don't agree with you, they know you're bullshitting. Yeah.
So let's focus on the positive first.
Of course, yeah. This is a very positive session. Yeah.
Finas, has been really supportive.
No, you say you wanted positive.
Positive first, yeah. Through our grants and FIMI, but I know there will never be enough grants or rebate incentive because we are serving over 500 studios in Malaysia alone, and we are producing more and more films each year. But I think the biggest challenges would be we don't have enough facilities for post-productions for me, and also equipment that sometimes we have to ship from Singapore, and also talents, because after the pandemic, a lot of people left the industry or left the country.
Oh, really?
Yes, so now, especially when we are producing like more than 10 films a year, big blockbuster films a year, we have to share. We have to share the talent, to be fair. But then again, I think that is why we are also going for co-productions to actually explore the Southeast Asian talents too. I think co-production is really helpful. And, especially for us, we produce a lot of action films, and we don't have a lot of stunt team, and we don't have a lot of stunt facilities, stunt equipment that can actually provide or to achieve what we want to do. So what we did recently, because we don't even know where to look, so we actually decided to co-produce a Hong Kong film, a small direct-to-OTT Hong Kong film, and through that co-production, we are now producing another Malaysian film, but with a Hong Kong production house. And right now we will be sharing their stunt director and stunt team, where we will be doing some post-production, stunt post-production in Hong Kong, and use their facilities for the stunt equipment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, I think we are one of the few countries that I think at any given time, more than half of the films released do have some kind of FINAS funding because they will have a FINAS logo. So they have DKD or some, distribution fund and that kind of thing. But so there is that kind of support, but maybe there are other things lacking also that makes people not want to see a lot of these films. Yeah. So what is unique in Philippines? Positive, please. Nothing.
Oh, positive.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if this is positive or not, but everybody is shocked when we say, oh, we shoot films in like 10 to 15 days.
There's a Pito, right? There was a thing in the
Even
past.
shorter. There are ones that are shorter, and everyone's so surprised. But then we do, even our art house is like between 15 to 20 days. So I guess, and now we have laws to keep the hours to like 14 or 12 to 14 hours shoot. So I don't know if that's positive or negative.
It's good. You don't want to overwork people.
Yeah, because before I've been in sets where we shot for like 28 hours for one day.
Yeah.
And then I think for the Philippines, I don't know if others will agree, but we are a country where we speak English quite well.
Of course, very well.
And so it's easier for foreign crews to come and shoot in the country.
Right.
And then we now have talents like editors, makeup artists, and whatnot that are getting to be known in the Southeast Asian film circuit that they are actually hired with or without the fund from the Philippines.
Right. Okay, good. Okay, second last question. What advice would you give to new producers here who want to explore the possibility of A, working with a producer from another country, and B, wanting to export to another country? So maybe it's two different things, or you can focus on one or the other. So if someone say, hey, it would be a great idea to work with somebody from a different country, what would your maybe like red flags? What to look out for? Maybe based on your own experience.
I mean, advice, yeah. Well, if any producers here or any filmmakers who wants to produce a film, I would suggest to focus on the local market first, and please seek advice from the bigger distributors, even the global distributors, because they would then give feedbacks that will give that global appeal that can possibly bring your film across Southeast Asia. And I know, in terms of some filmmakers, they want to challenge themselves and produce something different. But at this juncture, there's this thing about timing, because I think after the pandemic across Southeast Asia, actually globally, we are still recovering from the market. And that is why you can see a lot of international films or foreign films are not working in their local cinemas. Like Vietnam, the number one films are all Vietnamese films. And same goes to Malaysia. And you can see the decrease in audience as well, compared to, I would say, 2019. Drastic drop in audience coming to the cinema. So, to bring them back, which we are still doing, you still have to have that audience appeal. What can we do to actually bring them back to the cinema? I think that would be the main goal. Instead of, doing something challenging, unless it's a festival route film, then you have a different goals. But try to prioritize your local audience first.
Maybe you have to work with a co-producer for Alem. Yeah. What do you look out for? Good things.
So this is what I always tell my students. You have to be very honest with yourself. What's your vision? What do you want to achieve with the films that you do? Do you want to show it locally and get a big audience? Do you want to make money from your films? Or do you want to go to the festival route and then eventually get funding internationally for your projects? You have to be very honest with yourself, because the path for both are very different. And if you're honest with yourself, then try to work and study that path to be successful in whatever path you choose. There is no right or wrong path, but at the end of the day, what is the reason why you're into filmmaking? And I think that's very, very important. That's the first thing you admit to yourself. And of course, do your work, do your research, do your homework. Find out who are out there, what are the films that are doing well. there are two Malaysian films that come into mind that have done quite well internationally. It's Tiger Stripes, and then there's a short film that just won the Queer Palm in Cannes.
Yeah.
I forget-
Bleat.
Yes, Bleat. Right. So find out which path you want to take, and then study the path. Like find out what festivals they went to, who are their co-producers, who are their financiers, what they did to find everything that they did, and who they worked with, and try to learn from these people. But at the end of the day, you have to be honest with yourself first. What you want to do.
Okay, you're dying to say something. Yeah.
I can't agree more with Alam, yeah. But I think it's quite funny that we sit here and giving advice, because each generation will have their own way and own path to reach to their goal. So I think it sounds cliche, but what coming from my experience is you really have to love what you do, love your country, love your culture, really care about it, care about what's happening around you, because I believe one story can travel. It cannot stay away from your identity, your country, your culture. And that's the strength of the storytelling. We can't have a global audiences without local audience, good local audiences. So care about what's around you. I think that's the foremost important thing. So in Vietnam, I work a lot with young talent. So another advice I would say is to improve your soft skills. So filmmaking is not only about making the scene, writing the script. It has to do a lot with people and human being connection. So build that, have good skill of that. Sometimes I decided to work with director even before the story is completed, because it's a talent that I want to support, I want to help. So there's a lot to do, not only the story, it's yourself that the producer want to work with. So yeah, so that's my part.
I suppose it will be similar, and I think just know the audience, know the story that you're telling, and just try.
Okay, because talking about Shamin was talking about taking advice from distributors. I spoke to Mr. Murthy from Lotus, who's been a distributor for decades, Lotus from the 80s onwards. And he gave me three tips to how to make a successful Malay movie. I won't tell two of them because secret. One of them I still remember to this day. He said, for Malay movie to be successful, it has to be a little bit Indian. So I thought, wow, that's true. And the other two things he said also very true. So yeah, so that's the thing. I think we have time for Q&A from the audience. It's a bit silau here. So if I don't notice you, raise extra high. Yes, we have two, right? One here. So far, is there a third? I think if the questions are short, we take all three in a gola. So if you can keep, is there a third one there? There is. Okay, so we start there. Yeah.
Start from me. Hi, everyone.
Silau. Okay. A lot of Tagalog words are similar to Malay, so say silau is the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Agzina. I'm from a film production house in Indonesia. It's called Heart Pictures. It's very interesting for us to be here because you guys mentioned about art films and commercial films, how they're very different within their audience, their market, and also maybe investors and funding. That actually what people said to us about a year ago. But the problem here about commercial film in Indonesia, all we see in the cinemas currently is just horror. At one point, we need to give the people something a bit more interesting and also inspiring rather than just jump scare. So last year we had an opportunity to work with Jeremiah Nyangon, we are doing the filming right now. If you know him, he directed the Women from Rote. Yeah, won a lot of awards, but also missing the commercial value of it. So right now we are filming actually with him. And we're trying to push the barriers, the boundaries between art film and also commercial. So we are actually putting Reza Rahadian, who is also coming here in the next few days, which also has very commercial values and face for our market, to be the main actor leading. Some people said we are crazy about it, about making this film happen, stepping the foot on both sides, the art and also the commercial. But what I want to hear from your point of view, do you guys think we're crazy, or are you guys also optimistic about the this
Right.
genre.
The successful marriage of
Yes.
the two. Yeah. Okay. We'll take the other two as well. Because I think, because it's better if not maybe just one or two people can answer each question. We don't have to. Yes. Or you can just shout out. I can repeat.
Hi, my name is Zion. I'm with a VFX studio called Studio Voxel, and I'm a pretty new screenwriter as well. I should stand up for this maybe. You mentioned that a co-production go up to 4 or even more countries involved in the production. How do you make sure that everybody, all parties are sort of on the same page on what the vision of the film should be, and maybe any advice that could help with managing that relationship with all these different parties?
Okay, that's good. Okay. Down here. I think just shout lah. It's okay. Keep it casual. So, keeping crap the question, is it a mad idea to try and marry the two, art house and commercial, about managing expectations among the different co-production partners? This one? Just shout it. I'll repeat it. Sit down. We don't want to hear Singaporeans. No, kidding. kidding. We love Singaporeans, yeah. No lah, food is fine. It's just propaganda, yeah. Oh, investing in like building relationships to Oscars, that kind of thing. Okay. You're talking about investing in films or investing in like markets? So, soft power kind of thing. Okay. Projector, is it? Oh. Oh, okay. Okay, so for those of you who couldn't hear, the first question was: are Malaysians willing to invest in long-term relationships overseas, like the way the Koreans did? You know, it wasn't overnight, right? This K-pop kind of Hallyu kind of wave. And the second is in Singapore, the disappearing all independent cinema spaces, which I think is not unique to Singapore. A lot of other places are finding it very difficult. So I think we had one more, right? Question that side.
Hi. So my question sort of builds off of what Tran you mentioned before in the previous response. I'm curious to know from a producer's perspective, like how you pick your projects and especially how you sort of navigate the process of working with new people, especially writers and directors. I think that in some sense, the relationship between a producer and a director is very intimate and requires a lot of trust. And that's not something that is sort of decided premeditatedly, right? It's kind of a thing that naturally evolves from kind of knowing each other over like the course of months and years. So if, you know, coming from a directing and writing background, I'm very curious to know from a producing point of view, what's the kind of defining factor in that relationship?
Okay, thanks. So those are our 4 questions. I just wanted to quote the Indonesian producer Mira Lesmana in answer to your last question, but of course they can answer as well. She said that if she and the director have similar taste in music, she thinks they can get along. So the first meeting will be they'll talk about music first. Yeah, so maybe that's unique to her, but others may have some. So who wants to take these barrage of questions? Maybe Shamin, the Malaysian one. Are you willing to invest, like send somebody to LA to campaign so that Scope can win?
At this point, no. Definitely no.
Somehow I knew that. Yeah.
It's not that we don't dream to be in the international stage, but we are still trying our best to actually send Malaysian movies out there across Southeast Asian, because I think amongst all the other Southeast Asian country, unfortunately, Malaysia is known the least.
No, Brunei is. Come on. Don't put ourselves down. There's always Brunei. No, we love Bruneians, really, really.
Yeah, so the answer is no. But I want to go back to that Indonesian question.
yes, yeah.
Actually, I have a question for you. For us, for Scope Productions, we even for all of the other Malaysian producers, we have been trying our best to penetrate Indonesian market by sending all sorts of genres. And yes, the only film that worked there is a horror movie. But until today, regardless of the locations or the cinema screens that we received, but regardless of those, we keep wondering why the Indonesian audience only come to the cinema for horror films. Is there a particular reason? I know that there's another genre that works now, which is family drama. That is also very big in Indonesia. But we cannot find the answer of or any indication of to why the audience or the cinema audience is only attracted to horror.
Okay. So maybe, yeah.
Can you,
Oh, okay.
Can someone
It
give
becomes
the
a
mic
reverse
to-
Q&A.
yeah.
Okay, that's good. Just a trivia note. Today
many
is Thursday, which is when movies... today is Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Tomorrow is Thursday, which is when movies open in Malaysia. I will read you the titles of four movies opening tomorrow in Malaysia. Syirik, Danyang Laut Selatan, horror movie from Indonesia. Gunde, horror movie from Indonesia. Hotel Sakura, horror movie from Indonesia. Jalan Pulang, horror movie from Indonesia. So there should be
At
an
least we're
Indonesian
good in
horror
one thing.
movie producer here on this panel. They can teach us.
So maybe I think for that, we have to have more discussion. We would like to know also from other people's point of view, because we are trying to find out ourselves here as Indonesia producer why. But the thing is, right now, that's the genre that works. So all the big production house are trying to just taking all the advantage of the market right now. But if you ask why, there are so many social aspects that we should take a look. Indonesia is very strong in mystery, legends, and all of that. That's are the stories, not only by film, but also that's the stories that we tell every day in our families and in the social communities that we have. So yes, horror and stories like that is strong and close to our communities and our culture. So maybe that's the reason. But especially right now, there are some family drama movies that are also getting there. That's why we are making also a drama film. We're trying to penetrate the acceleration of this interest in the market. Maybe there's only horror movie in Indonesia because that's what the people and the producer are trying to give them.
producing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That works also, but maybe this drama can work too. That's why more producers are also making this film. But it's still the very beginning. That's why we're trying to penetrate the market interest in this. But at the same time, when you see horror films, I'm not saying it's bad quality. This is all my opinion. But for Indonesia market, they don't actually need complex stories for them to be interested. I think simple and basic movies could also make them happy. But maybe it's just the story and not only jump scare film that has actually something in the story and then the meaning meaning and that works.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
But
you.
I don't believe that is 100% true as well, because I noticed that the TV dramas or the TV content or even the content on your OTT platforms, one of the highest ratings is actually zombie movies, zombie series, action series, right? So there are millions of audience out there that are not going to the cinema for different genres of films. So, to answer to your question, hats off to you for trying
Yes,
to
true.
produce that. Honestly, I think, it will be very, very challenging. But even for us, We are doing a lot of co-productions now, starting from this year with Indonesian studios to actually understand the market better. Because I think it is a hard and complicated market to understand, but I know that, we should just keep challenging the audience to keep feeding the audience new content because I believe they are attracted to other genres than horror.
Yeah, I think there was a great success in Indonesia last year that married domestic with horror. It was called Ipar Adalah Maut because because it's like the sister-in-law from hell, right? So it's like it's a horror. I think psychologically it's horror. It's like Fatal Attraction, right? It's like your sister is gunning for your husband. That's a horror. Right? So I think So the Singapore, but of course you plan to open your own cinema, right? That's your long-term goal.
When you fund me, I will open.
Oh,
I'm ready. No, but I don't think it's a challenge that is unique to Singapore. And Singapore has always been a small market. So when you produce films for Singapore, it is very tough. There is only one or two sort of like director that managed to crack Singapore's box office. And historically, it has always been tough. That's why co-production is a good way for us to explore, I think, like other revenues from outside of Singapore. And Singapore is a little bit SPG. I can't remember what it stands for anymore. But
Sarong Patigal?
Yes.
Oh,
exactly.
people still say that. I thought it's like
Yeah.
My
When things
generation.
do well
Okay.
outside of Singapore,
Okay.
it does better in Singapore.
Yes.
And typically, I think like for a lot of our films, when it do well, whether it's international sales or like festivals, then it tend to do well in Singapore. And it's a tough one because like globally, I think that's the challenge that people are facing. When I can pay $3 for Prime for a month to watch films and series that are produced for $10 million, why would I pay $20 to come to the cinema to watch a local film? And then I think that's a challenge that takes more than just like producers. It takes like a whole community of like policymakers, creators to all come together to figure out how we want to define what cinema film is going to be for us in the next decades.
Okay, true. So, who wants to answer the question about managing expectations of different partners, making sure everybody is happy?
I guess when you choose at the start, you send out like your dossier and whatnot, and then for people to come on board, and from that alone, you can already tell what in the film they like and what resonated with them. At the same time, also as I mentioned a while ago, do your research. Like how did other partners who worked with them, how were they? How were they in dealing with it? I would caution having too many partners, as Sun said, and it's better. It's actually more advantage if they're mostly Asian, so it's easier to maneuver. But then there is much more funding in Europe.
And now Middle East, right? Qatar and all that.
Yeah, but usually the Middle East is just they give money, whereas the Asian and the Singapore, the European, you have to spend it in those countries. So you can only divide, like you have your cinematographer, editor, etc. You can only farm out so many, and if you farm them out all over the place, then it will be very hard for you to work with all of them and fly around working in.
And
all
your
the
Zoom
places.
meeting times,
I had to Zoom Hawaii, Australia, Europe. It's really just crazy.
Right. Okay, who wants to handle the question about chemistry with the director? How do you know this is someone you want to spend the next 2 years of your life with?
I think if we made...
But you're easy. It's your brothers lah. It's like how difficult.
I think if we made through the development process, we would survive through the production. I always believe that.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other input?
I mean, it's always a marriage. So you have to be understanding, and it's such a long process. Filmmaking, it's like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and you have to. I think I have really intimate relationships with my directors, and a lot of it is because I think I love the stories that they want to tell. It can be boring, and we have good chemistry, and there's an understanding of like, I think we want to grow together, or we want to make a certain films together, or we have common sort of like goals in mind.
Okay, I think I'm forgetting one question. Did somebody ask a question that I forgot, or did we Did we manage to handle all the questions? We did all. Wow, we did quite good time. So maybe we end on a slightly gossipy note. Who's the worst director you've worked with? But you don't have to mention names. You can say my friend worked with this, So maybe, it's potential red flags, because if it's all good news, it's no fun, right? So...
I think you need to get us drunk.
Okay. Also in Malaysia cannot. It's like, or in finance funded things cannot. In other funded things can. Yeah. Or the closing night at MIFFest. So thank you very much. We are told that time is up. I'm sure one of our panelists has to catch a flight soon, but the rest can hang around a bit longer. If you have specific questions, bring your name card and so on. And I hope as a result of this, ASEAN will co-produce a Malaysian film finally after years of doing every other country. So do pitch to her. Look at Momo Films. They have fantastic catalog. And Alem as well. You've never co-produced with Malaysia as well?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, because
Because
there's no funding.
Oh yeah. Well, true. Yes. So yeah, that's another problem. How do we get rich Malaysians to fund films? But that's an entirely different discussion. So if we had that, you will have more co-productions as well. So thank you very much.